So from 2010 to 20, well, I guess from just prior to the pandemic, I was going back to New York a lot and had an apartment there. And my students maybe were 50-50 here and there. Um, and yeah, it was a lot of travel. I met my wife in 20, well, I known my wife for years. We were friends, but we started dating in 2016, and she is an art educator at the North Carolina Museum of Art in Raleigh. And so I had a reason to kind of come back to Raleigh. And previously, I was running a place in Chapel Hill, and once we started dating, we very quickly things accelerated, and we got married. A year and a half after that, and I spent less time in New York as a result. Maybe instead of going every week, um, it kind of phased down. And after we had the baby, my daughter Nikila was born in June of 2019. Uh, then New York became just something I went once a month to. Um, but I hope that when my daughter's a little older, I'll get back there. And because, this training is very important. And my teacher, Krishna Mohan Bhatt, lives in New York. And I would, every time I see him, he's like, you should just stay here, stay for a week, stay out, he's like, he'll give me the Airbnb next door. He wants me to be that close with him. And I see that too, that, it's not a kind of thing you can just go and take a little, and you have to really sit. And when I'm in his company, that's the most important thing I have to do that day. And if I have to teach later, well, if he's not finished teaching me, then I'm not teaching later, kind of thing. Um, my other teacher is in Calcutta, and I'm taking sitar classes with him. I just started again. It had been a long break from him because neither these teachers were offering anything online. And so he just started to, and I thought, well, that would be a really nice opportunity because since the pandemic started, I've had quite a bit of time to kind of develop and practice because there's not much else to do. And whenever you have time and you have a good teacher, then, it's a good win-win scenario. So I've been really enjoying my time with him. Just started in July again with Parthada. And we meet over Skype twice a month. And it's been really, really good because here in Raleigh, I have not had many opportunities to play, and just to have someone hear my playing that's on a higher level than me, and so that's very good. I do get together with Guruji's son. He plays sarangi, and I'll play sitar. And one of my classmates at Ali Akbar College lives in Eugene, Oregon. His name's Eric Frandon, and he's a sarod player. And so once a week I get together with him and we play. So I'm still playing with musicians, but I just don't really have at this point much interest in playing, a masked up concert or an online concert. I understand the importance of those things and I support others doing them. But at this phase in my life with a young baby and just so many responsibilities, I welcome the time away from full-on performing for a little while. Going to back up and just talk about the Raga Revival and how that all kind of came to.
Actually, can I ask you to fill in a couple of things?
Yes.
Some of them are just names. You mentioned your first sitar teacher.
Yes, her name is Sudha Iyer. Okay. Sudha Iyer. And she lives in Cary, North Carolina now. And she came to my last concert, which was in February at the Art Museum.
Hmm.
And it was really nice. After many years, she heard my playing, and she's just a sweet, sweet person, very supportive of all that we've been doing here.
Hmm. Great. There are some questions. Feel free to answer them or don't, depending on how you feel. I would love to know why your parents came. Um,
Yes. Why did my parents come to America? My dad had a job at like the National Chemical Laboratory in India, and it was a very good job. I think his younger brother had come to the US to go to college a few years before dad immigrated here. And I think part of it could have been just like um, being a religious minority. They thought America would be more welcoming. And maybe a part of it was just, my sister, when they came to America, was like maybe two and a half at the time, and they just wanted a better quality of education and for her. My dad has told me a couple reasons like that. Once they got here, they didn't. My mom was a nurse in India. My dad was had this great government job, and things weren't easy for either of them finding work when they got here. And dad worked in all sorts of jobs that were nowhere near as you know like in his skill set before he finally did get his foot in the door. And my mom ended up working in like nursing homes and things like that instead of operating rooms. But in time they both found their jobs that suited their skill set, and did very well here. um, I think a big part of it with why they came here was um, family members that had gotten here right before them. My parents were still one of the newer ones. And it was also maybe in the age of, had like my sister been 9 or 10 and already had, like, they might have been less um, interested in moving. But since she was still young, they thought, okay, we can do this and we can have more children in America. Um, and I would assume being Christian was part of that.
was there like a sponsoring church or something in Raleigh, or why did they choose Raleigh?
Oh, why did they? Okay, so when they first got to the U.S., they stayed in Brooklyn. They were in Brooklyn for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then they went to Naperville, Illinois. That's where my uncle lives, and they stayed there for about a year. And then they then they went to move to South Carolina. There was some job Dad got in South Carolina. I'm not sure who he worked for. It was in like Florence, South Carolina, or near Columbia or something like that. And so they were there for maybe 18 months. And then my dad got a job with a chemical company that brought him to Raleigh.
Okay.
And at that point, they were still like, if they'd go out to a restaurant or they'd go out, they get a lot of looks in the mid 70s here. There were not many Indian people, maybe like 30 people in the whole town of Raleigh at that point. But things changed by the time I was born. I was born in 80. Um, and there were quite a number of families. And but dad would still tell stories of, like, you didn't go to the Indian grocery store then, you went to somebody's garage that had all these things. Um, but yeah, so you have any more questions?
Yeah. You mentioned you had a fairly successful band when you're a sophomore in high school. Do you want to? Can you give us the name of the band?
Yes, the
Also,
name the
what
name of the
music?
band was actually my last name, but I didn't name the band. The band was called Chitnis. And that band morphed into a like a R&B hip hop group like 6 or 7 years later. Um, well, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years later, and had maybe just like two or three of the same members. But those people I still play music with these days, and it's all over Logic. And you know what Logic is? It's a recording program. And so we're still like making music. to this day. We have gone on hiatuses before, but not many people can say, hey, I still make music with these people I played music with 25 years ago. And pretty good music at that, I'd say.
You still
More
use
for
the same
fun
name?
these days, you know?
Does the band still use the same name?
No, the band name right now is Pro L. And
Dorothy.
yes, it was trying to be an abbreviation for the proletariat, and that band name has been the band name for over 20 years now.
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What
Um,
kind of what kind of instrument do you play in the band in that
that's a
band?
good question.
Yeah.
Mostly these days I write on piano, and I record a lot of guitar still for the band. I do not play very many Indian instruments. There was a phase that I did play a little more sitar and crossover stuff, but it's for some reason the way I evolved, I never felt a need to do that because I could always just voice my ideas on the instrument I wanted. Um, but in the house, the majority of my writing in the last 10 years has been on piano, and the 10 years before that, it was all guitar. And I still record guitar and for other people's songs, and but I don't practice it much. My guitar is at the bass player's house, and that was before quarantine. I play my wife's guitar in the house, so she lets me play it.
yeah.
Um, but if you don't mind, I just want to kind of talk a little bit about what happened with the Raga revival.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I was teaching here, started teaching in '05, and by say 2014, I had quite a few students. And there wasn't very many opportunities for myself or them to find like legitimate places to perform. And I had one student, she was maybe high school age, and she'd worked really hard on her piece, and I was really just trying to get some opportunities out there. And there was a group of musicians that mostly singers, and I was invited to their weekly meeting to perform. And I won't say, maybe it was miscommunication, but what ended up happening was I told them I will do it, but I want to have my student play with me. And they just weren't into that idea. And it broke my students' heart because they did it in such a way that they confirmed the concert and then were kind of rescinded. And I was just thinking, I think I could do something better than this, for everybody. And so I got together with a couple of my students and my colleagues and peers, and we started with a mailing list, just 20 or 30 emails, and started talking, brainstorming venues. And in the beginning, we didn't have anything, and we were doing this out of our homes and other people's homes, these weekly gatherings, and there would be a little snack at the end and a jam session and a couple feature artists, little music circles. And the first one was in July of 2015, I believe. And within 2 or 3 months of that, we found our first venue in Hillsborough, North Carolina. And this place was like a yoga studio called the Holistic Health Center. And we were doing maybe every other week there, and then found another venue in downtown Raleigh called Cirque du Val. And we're doing weekly concerts. At some point, I realized there's just not enough talent to book different artists every week here. We're kind of limited. So I went more bi-weekly, and then it ended up being a monthly thing probably by 2016, 2017. And, I always liked the idea of kind of integrating the communities. I'm an American person. I grew up here. Some of the people that come to our concerts are learned in India. They're, in a lot of ways, they're more connected to India and their community than I am. And as as people in a minority, you want to live around the people you are like some way in some ways. And so that's what kind of happened here. All the Indians, they live in Cary and Morrisville in Wake County. There's a few in Durham. There's a few in North Raleigh, but they are kind of clustered like that. The people that enjoy Indian music, however, are not. They come from all sorts of backgrounds. Maybe they're blues musicians that love the Beatles. Maybe they're meditation people. Maybe there's somebody that took a Hindi language class in college and loves the food and goes to the restaurants and hears this music and wants to know more. Um, and so I think one of the big things Raga Revival did was find a way to make the model of performing Indian classical music as a donation-based thing um, financially viable by creating all or amalgamating all these groups into a audience that gets the same newsletter every month, and they know that all the concerts are happening instead of it was one or two organizations and they have their thing. So I'd send out an email every month and it has anything I found out, whether it's my show or not, and just in hopes that other people will go. And it started to work, and the concert scene, it really improved dramatically. um, and by 2016, there were a number of artists that they had never performed ever anywhere, and they were performing at the Raga Revival. And then 18 months later, they're getting really good, and it was just a nice thing. And a lot of the artists were people that were serious as youngsters, and then came and life happened. They had children, and now they're at a phase of their life. They want to perform again, and they want to play at a legitimate venue that doesn't have food, that doesn't have background noise, and is really a kind of a venue for music lovers. Um, and so that's kind of what we did. And for a number of years, we were out of two venues, one in Carborough and one in downtown Raleigh, and did 6 shows a piece there. Sometimes we'd change it up. Sometimes it'd be in Durham occasionally. We found a home at the North Carolina Museum of Art just at the beginning of this year. And we did our first show there in February, and then all this happened in March. But I have some shows booked there in the future, and I look forward to expanding that partnership. Um, right now, I'd say our community grew from 20, 30 people to now 600, 700 people that I see. I don't see them all at every show, but it's a much bigger community in the 5 years we've been doing the concert series. And looking forward, the most important thing I think Raga Revival showed was, hey, this can be done. And Raga Revival is one of those things anyone could do. I have friends in New York, they started this thing called Brooklyn Raga Massive. And I wouldn't say I totally copied them, but they were a little older than me and a little more, business savvy than me. And what they did was started playing Indian music in jazz clubs and try to integrate those audiences. And, I did something kind of similar here, except I'm not in clubs. Um, but I think this model could work in a number of ways, a number of formats, popularizing music that often is lacking a distribution, lacking a way to share it aside from its folk festivals or college venues, that are more focused less on the top tier of talent and more about all stratas of talent, and finding ways to make creative partnerships from what's already in your community. And yeah, that's the most amazing thing about it for me is how well this has worked. Um, and I didn't think it would last 5 years, but it seems to be going very well and strong. And the biggest thing I can hope for is that someone else will start something like it after seeing what we did. That's kind of what I think would be the greatest gratification, is seeing other gatherings like this happen. I think it's a strong enough community. You could have 3 or 4 kinds of organizations like this doing concerts. And there are some, but not one that's quite like this, that is um, kind of, piecemealed in the way it is.